I broke through the carbonate, that's how I got free. Jabba back off because there's no stopping me. Postmodern player, sample-tastic, flows ekphrastic. I get drastic, hey, watch the plastic. Yo, I name check and leave you drastic.
Welcome to the MacGuffin Podcast, episode 142. I'm Spencer.
I'm Greg.
Today, in honor of the release of the Avengers this Friday, May 4th, we're going to be talking about the films that preceded the Avengers, that were part of the mythos, if you will.
The Avengers probably was, made as a film because of these.
Sure. But, sort of the recent ones. We're not going to go all the way back to, Lou Ferrigno Hulk. We'll talk about Lou Ferrigno a little bit, but, we're talking about the modern ones, say, post-2000.
Yeah.
Because that is
the Marvel Studios conglomeration.
Yes. Well, a little bit even before that, but also just simply people who are going to be involved, mostly, in the Avengers movie as it comes out. So we're going to start back in 2003. This is probably the one that's the greatest stretch in terms of talking about the Avengers, and that is Ang Lee's Hulk.
Yes. Eric Bana and
Jennifer Connelly and Nick Nolte.
Oh, I always forget he was in that.
He was the villain, no less. This is probably the most maligned, I would say, of the films preceding the Avengers. I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm actually kind of a fan of it.
I kind of like it. My problem, and when I understand why people have such a problem with it, is that this was kind of in that area where people were attempting to make arty movies that were superhero movies. And I think that's what this suffers from, is it tries to be too much of an artsy, superhero movie rather than just an origin story or a straight-up superhero action flick.
Well, to be fair, I will say, they actually do the origin in the film, which you can argue, later films that we'll talk about sort of skip that step, which I don't know if that's fair or not, because this is sort of like the groundwork that they sort of use to build that, sort of like Spider-Man,
Yeah.
I one of the things that I think might be a reason why people didn't like it is, spoiler, quote-unquote spoiler, this isn't really a spoiler, but the Hulk doesn't even appear until 42 minutes into the film.
Yes.
And for a film called just called Hulk, that's kind of an important key,
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Nick Nolte wasn't the most villainous villain. Is that a thing?
Yeah, we're going to say it is now.
Evil. He wasn't the most menacing villain? Does that sound better? Is that better?
That's also better. I'll take either. Villainous villain, menacing villain. I'm okay with
that. But, for, he's the father of Bruce, and there's this weird sort of, rewriting. I mean, that was actually in the comics, right?
I actually do not remember, to be
I
honest.
don't believe that's in the comic.
Hulk, as I know, if I remember correctly, one of those characters that has had their backstory changed a variety of times. So,
and this is going way back, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby. I mean, this is probably one of
the first time I don't remember if it's the first time, but one of the first times he's the Hulk, he fights hulked up dogs. It's come on, nobody cares. If you're gonna have Hulk, let Hulk fight Hulk-like things. Don't make it all emotionally charged. And
I don't know if
his internal struggle.
I mean, that's kind of an interesting question. What is a legitimate fight for the Hulk? I mean, they had the X-Men versus, or not X-Men, Wolverine versus the Hulk animated movie. Is that what counts as a legitimate? Because he's such a big badass.
Any other super strong superhero out there? There's a plethora of them in the Marvel universe that are big and invulnerably. I mean, Rogue versus the Hulk would be interesting.
But aren't these all really heroes? I mean, we need more. We need more big villains. Should note
Abomination.
Could pull that one out.
So he fights in the second one. So.
Should note that Lou Ferrigno makes a cameo appearance in this as a security guard.
Yes.
Not a substantial part, but they're throwing some work Lou Ferrigno's way. Not a biggest Lou Ferrigno fan. Guy's not actually that nice guy. Just saying from personal experience, from interacting with him at cons. Just saying, whatevs.
The interesting thing too is that pacing and story aside, this movie tried visually to actually look like a comic. I seem to remember a lot of multi-shots within one frame, thick kind of moving panes, and it attempted to have...
an interesting dude.
Yeah, it attempted to visually look like a comic. The problem was there was just no energy behind it. It just kind of
I like Eric
lilted
Bana.
along.
I'm sorry. I am pro Eric Bana. I think that end sequence where he's in the rainforest. He's like, you don't want to get me angry. Awesome. I totally would have liked an Eric Bana sequel. I am sorry. I am in the minority. I realize that. The real turning point in terms of the Avengers being a thing though was Iron Man in 2008. before Iron Man and its smash success, which I think was the thing that sort of turned it.
Yes.
You know, the idea of the Avengers is something that was mostly a theoretical idea, you know.
Just like Justice League.
Yeah,
DC,
well, that's exactly it. You know, they've talked about that, but it's sort of like, I don't know how you get all these superheroes under one banner. And, I mean, obviously you could argue the X-Men being an example of that working. Or Ocean's 11. Come on.
Superheroes. Moving on.
They are super, and they are heroes.
No.
But, you know, Iron Man itself was like, not only was it a huge success and sort of like opened the door for the Avengers, but it also opened that door for like offbeat heroes, so to speak, because Iron Man I wasn't familiar with going into the film.
Really?
Like, I mean, I'm sure I'd heard him. I know the song. Like, nah. Like,
for an Iron Man.
I'd heard the song though, and I was like, okay, Iron Man.
Okay.
But like, I really knew very little about the character, and you know, sort of a drunk screw up as a character is really an awkward hero in a lot of ways. I guess you call it anti-hero, maybe? I don't know.
To a certain extent, yeah. Tony Stark kind of rides that line in his history.
But Robert Downey Jr. was like, I don't know if there's been a better cast person in the last, like, decade. Like, he is perfect for Tony Stark.
You know, the ones that have come along later have been good fits that they've molded the actor along, but this was one that it was just like persona and actor clicked without even any pushing. It was just like, you see Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, you're like, oh, totally. Like...
And I don't know at what point they realized that this was like a perfect start to the Avengers initiative, if you will, because they actually have, you know, a sequence in the movie at the end where they have Nick Fury, played by Samuel Jackson, basically try and recruit Tony Stark to the Avengers. I don't know if they'd filmed the movie and they were so pleased by the like feedback they were getting at that point that they went back and then shot it.
That's a good question. If it was like something that just Marvel Studios being like, we've got the whole control of this property, let's do it if it's successful or not. If they knew they had a good movie on their hands.
Well, that's the thing that was complicated about it. Is that some of the properties were owned by Paramount and stuff like that, so the idea of making an Avengers was a bit of a challenge because they didn't actually own the rights to everything at that point. I mean,
which is why Spider-Man and the X-Men will never show up in any Avengers-esque crossover, because the rights to them are still owned by other people, or at least the film rights.
I mean, I wonder what exactly it will take. I mean, if they have to make a film every so often.
That's why the new Amazing Spider-Man is coming out, so that Sony doesn't lose their control over the Spider-Man franchise, which would revert to Marvel Studios, and then Marvel Studios could incorporate it however they wanted into the Avengers films, or any other. They could be like, Iron Man 3, Spider-Man shows up, but...
Okay, a few things to note about Iron Man, though. Gotta love Jean Favreau. Good work there. Yes. Excellent work as a director.
Bouncing back after the failure that was Daredevil.
He didn't direct that, though.
I know, but he was just in it. I just like to attribute it to him.
Okay.
Because poor guy, that movie was so bad, anybody involved.
I think he did Zathura maybe before this. I mean, this was definitely, I don't know, Elf, Zathura, one or the other was before. Very different films, though. Number one, nominated for 2 Academy Awards, both technical, visual effects, and sound editing.
Understandable.
So interesting. Even more peculiar to me, though, was it was nominated for a bunch of MTV awards. Not necessarily a surprise.
Yeah.
Number one, though, in 2008, it was nominated for an award called Best Summer Movie So Far. Okay, that's a weird...
The award for lowest common denominator.
That's a weird enough award. But then, in 2009, it was nominated for Best Movie and Best Male Performance. How one film is nominated in 2 separate years for different MTV awards?
It just tells you how relevant the MTV Movie Awards
or how casual they are with the categories.
That's what I'm saying. They just do not care.
And the last thing
Best movie to come out on the 3rd Sunday in May. Like, who cares? That's not...
That would be an interesting statistics. And
it's probably an Underworld movie.
I don't know why they would release a movie on Sunday, but, you know, somebody's probably done it. No, the last thing I want to mention is that Iron Man is a founding member of the Avengers, along with Hulk, Ant-Man, Wasp, and Thor.
Yep.
Which I found to be weird because I thought Hulk was one of the first villains.
He is.
How is he a founding member and a villain?
Because the initial members actually get together to stop the Hulk because the Hulk is too strong, and then after beating him, he joins them.
But that wouldn't exactly make him a founding member then, would it? How did they found Marvel. It then? Like, okay, it doesn't make like
trying to make sense of comic properties in any sense.
Guess
come on,
not.
Come on.
Curiously enough, though. In the same year as Iron Man 2008, we also have the second Hulk movie, not to be confused with any continuity of the original Hulk movie.
A reboot.
A reboot of The Incredible Hulk. Like, I don't know what exactly made Marvel so amped to make another Hulk movie that fast. I mean, obviously the Batman movies had been coming out at this point and were really successful.
Maybe that... I think that it was based on their pre-production, their work on Iron Man. I just think, even though I know they came out at the same time, I think when they were like, oh, well, if we're thinking of maybe doing an Avengers, no one liked that first Hulk, so we're gonna have to redo it. So maybe they just fast-tracked another version along.
But it's also weird because, you know, there's so many other ones, you know, Thor, Captain America, etc., that they had to do that seem like easier films to do, especially after you're coming off a failure. Like, what makes you think that, you know, like, I mean, I guess
maybe that
Fantastic Four is an example of people, or Ghost Rider, were like, we're making this movie. It's gonna be good.
Maybe it was just that to try to let people know that it didn't have any connection to the Ang Lee one, so that people wouldn't, you know, assume that's the direction it was going.
I mean, they definitely have some connection in terms of the Avengers idea, because this also features a scene talking about the Avengers. You have was it General Ross, played by William Hurt, in a bar, approached by Tony Stark, talking about a team being formed, which is very vague, but you know, whatever. Again, you know, you recast Eric Bana, put Edward Norton in the role of the Hulk.
Who wrote most, I think, the final draft of the screenplay, if I remember correctly. There was...
He's not credited, is it?
He did a version of it. He did a complete rewrite of it at some point.
He's been known to go in and do that, because he did that with American History X.
Which, in my opinion, is what made it good, and is also why he didn't return as the Hulk, because they didn't like dealing with him.
Yeah, apparently it's very difficult to deal with. You know, we'll talk about that again with Terrence Howard when Iron Man goes forward. Lou Ferrigno appears as security guard again, but this time he's also the voice of the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, look at that.
Stepping up his game.
Next thing you know, he'll play it. Wait, he already did that.
Yeah. It's kind of weird also, because this film was directed by Louis Leterrier.
Okay.
Who is sort of, I don't know if you'd call him a disciple or a cohort of Luc Besson. He did The Transporter, he did Unleashed, he did Transporter 2, Clash of the Titans. Did somebody say Clash of Titans?
No. No one will speak of that horrible travesty ever again on this podcast.
And I will say, you know, watching the trailer for this movie, I thought the CGI looked terrible. Actual film was much better than I thought it was gonna be. I gotta say, it was handy that they skipped the whole origin story that really let you get into a much more deep, thought-provoking story, if you will.
Faster paced too.
But you know, it's sort of a cheat, if you will, you know, in terms of like a movie like this. But you know, whatever. I'm not gonna, because I know who the Incredible Hulk is. I don't know how appreciated it was from people who might not, especially those who are not as comic savvy.
Yes.
One other thing that we should note, in the final scene, when Banner's eyes are turning green, he smiles, and there's been a lot of debate as to whether that was meant to show Bruce finally controls the Hulk for a Hulk sequel, or will become a menace as the villain for the Avengers. We now know that he is not the villain.
True.
Which we'll talk about more as we go along.
I don't doubt he'll be villainous, but not the villain.
I don't know if that then means, you know, a future film will involve him being... I don't know. We'll see how much control he has over it in the Avengers, but that's something to think about. Strangely, after Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, the next film to come out was Iron Man 2, instead of, you know, again,
Hulk Iron Man.
Instead of those other ones that would be more, you know, important to get out there, you know, they clearly were jumping back into that cash cow, which was Iron Man.
I think it was exactly that, and I think it showed. Iron Man 2 was definitely a cash cow, and it was definitely not as
Well, it's interesting because Iron Man 2 was written by Justin Theroux, who was brought onto the project by Robert Downey Jr. because of his work with him on Tropic Thunder.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you can say boo, hoorah, or whatever you want on Justin Theroux. Definitely not as popular of a script.
Yes.
You know, you got everyone pretty much back. You sort of have the problem of the classic comic flaw in the films, which is multiple villains.
Yes.
You have both Mickey Rourke as Whiplash, and you have Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer.
That's right.
The industrialite, if you will. You know, I'm okay with it. You know, I think it's sort of interesting to deal with the idea of everyone knowing who Iron Man is, because he tells you at the end of Iron Man, he's like, guess what? I am Iron Man. And so you have to deal with the world knowing who he is, as well as sort of that pressure on him to be Iron Man. You know, actually see like the real drunk Tony Stark come out. You also see a lot more
drunk in his suit blowing up stuff.
Yeah, you also see sort of like the family weight coming onto him, you know, from like the videos of Howard Stark, you know, played by John Slattery in this case, which were really interesting. You got a lot of other sort of nods to Avengers, like Black Widow.
Yes,
they give a shout out to, which is really, I think, her only one so far. She appeared. She wasn't in. I don't think she was in Captain America.
I don't think so.
I don't think she was in Thor.
No, I think you're right.
So this is her only sort of nod. Originally, Black Widow was supposed to be played by Emily Blunt.
Interesting,
but she dropped out to being Gulliver's Travels. Whoops. Oh, whoops. Apparently Scarlett Johansson was so eager to play the character that she dyed her hair in advance of even getting the role.
Wow.
So good on you for that. Samuel L. Jackson only agreed to appear in this and a bunch of other ones. I guess he signed a 9-picture deal because they said he'd get more screen time instead of his like 1 minute at the end of the Iron Man. There are a few other scenes that are specific nods to the Avengers that we should note. When Tony Stark goes through his father's case, he comes across a Captain America comic book, which can be seen inside, and later uses the Captain America shield as a prototype to build the reactor. A news report of the Incredible Hulk's campus battle is seen near the end of the film. Stark and Fury discuss Stark's membership throughout the film, and Agent Coulson finds Thor's hammer in a crater in the post-credit scene.
Agent Coulson.
Yeah, Coulson.
Yes,
Coulson.
Coulson. He's an interesting character.
Played by Clark Gregg, who's wonderful. Again, another nod to somebody who's in the Avengers movie. Not a superhero, but nevertheless an important part of that team. Yeah, too many villains.
Whiplash should have had an actual character rather than just showed up and been violent and then left.
But I will say, Sam Rockwell did steal a few scenes in that movie because he was awesome. Yeah,
I mean, come on, you let Sam Rockwell be charming, he's gonna be pretty good at it.
He's a charming guy. Yeah. The next one to appear, we had a couple of them last year, was Thor.
Yes.
A la the Crater with Agent Coulson. This one directed by Kenneth Branagh, which was an interesting choice. You know, dude who did Much Ado About Nothing directing Thor. I was a little skeptical.
But I think it served it rather well.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite of the movies leading into...
we're talking about, you know, the... was it the Norse god Thor who comes to Earth after his father kicks him out of Asgard? Sort of has to reclaim his hero-dom. First time I watched it, I thought it was too much CGI.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I don't know how you're going to do anywhere like Asgard otherwise. So to be fair, I can't really criticize them too harshly for that. The more I watch it, the more I like it, though. I really like Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Natalie Portman's okay. Tom Hiddleston is great as Loki, and Loki ultimately became the villain for the Avengers. Which we should note. There's a couple things we gotta say about this film. Number one, the post-credit scene was directed by Joss Whedon to sort of make it flow into the continuity of the Avengers better. In the post-credit scene, you see Selvig has been taken to the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility where Nick Fury opens a briefcase and asks him to study a mysterious object, which Nick Fury says has mysterious untold power. An invisible Loki prompts Selvig to agree, which Selvig does. And what is it? It's the Infinity...
It's the Cosmic Cube.
It's a Cosmic Cube. Okay. So according to Kenneth Branagh, Odin runs the Marvel Universe. Because it was Odin who hid the Cosmic Cube in Captain America, the First Avenger, and the Infinity Gauntlet is in the Avengers.
Interesting. Interesting.
I don't know what we're learning.
The Infinity Gauntlet is in the Avengers?
That's what Kenneth Branagh has claimed. I don't know if that's truth or fact. I don't even know what that means, honestly.
That means that I'll just, yeah. If that's true, I'm very amazed and happy and even more excited about the Avengers.
So there you have it from a comic fan right
yes.
there.
The Infinity Gauntlet is your Green Lantern ring times 5 of the Marvel Universe.
Wow.
So
well, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, wow.
My question about Thor, though, is that Thor is trapped in Asgard at the end of the movie. I don't know what they're going to do to explain that, because they have to explain how he gets back to Earth. Like, unless they're just like, oh, and he's back, and they're going to deal with that in Thor 2 or something. Like, I don't know if they're going to somehow, like, go back in time or some weird Fast 5 type thing where, you know, see. Fast 5 takes place before Tokyo Drift. I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know.
It might, you know, it seems really complicated, but for all you know, it could be very simply and very simple and very simply explained. Yeah. I could come up with a plethora of silly reasons right now that would all make sense within...
Maybe. The other film that occurred last year was Captain America, the First Avenger, which I actually thought looked the best of the comic movies, trailer-wise, going into last summer. And it was okay. The problem with it, in my eyes, was that it was too easy. Like, Red Skull never really proved to be a skilled opponent. Like, he just sort of, like, rolls through the movie dealing with each small obstacle as he goes through.
And this is one of those things about the Captain America mythos, because Captain America comes out during World War II, and you know,
we should start. He is the first Avenger, being that he was like alive in World War II.
He's a super soldier. The super soldier serum they use on him, interesting sub-note, is never again successfully used in the entire Marvel universe, and countless countless characters come out of it, including Abomination in the second Hulk movie. Hulk, the gamma ray work is actually working on the super serum. So I mean, there's all sorts of random stuff. But interestingly enough, he starts in World War II in the Silver Age of comics, which were just about creating, to a certain extent, patriotism for America during this time of war. So as much as I agree it was kind of too easy, he just kind of won World War II and against it, like, that's kind of his precursor to get him into now, to actually have him have interesting fights and real villains that are a problem.
The Red Skull is like his main villain, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but through World War II, which still has a finite amount of time and has a certain amount of...
Red Skull not come back after World War II?
I don't... to be honest, I would have to double check my errata on that, but I know that their primary reason the Red Skull is going to have power is because of the Nazis being in power. So once they fall, I don't doubt that he still might exist as a villain.
I thought it was cool to watch, you know, the Captain America patriotism stuff. That was kind of interesting. I would have liked much more of the Nazi Red Skull stuff. Like, that would have been awesome. Raiders of the Lost Ark, which Joe Johnston worked on as the art director. So he's not shy of that. You know, Chris Evans, I thought, was a pretty good Captain America.
Yeah, I was really... I remember when he was first cast thinking there was no way they were going to do it, but they did it.
You know, I think Hugo Weaving was really good as the Red Skull. I hope he comes back in some form and you know is able to be more menacing. I think it was fine. I just wish there were more like stakes. I never really felt like, you know, Captain America was in danger.
I can understand that. It's kind of one of those unfortunate things where I feel like, you know, almost letting him just stay in the World War II for a full film and then having, you know, might have been better.
Well, he also has to be frozen.
Yes.
To, you know, actually...
Yes, he crashes a gigantic stealth bomber prototype into the North Pole.
And then they bring him out in modern times. So, you know, I think it was a decent film. I just wish I had more. Again, Joss Whedon was involved with some script rewrites. He said he just wanted to make some character connections. You know, the structures were really tight and he loved it. But there are a little opportunities to sort of like lend his voice a little bit and sort of getting ready for the Avengers.
Nice.
And also, Sam Jackson filmed the little bit at the end to help set up the Avengers preview, which they attached to the end of this movie. So, you know... I think it was a decent one. I don't know if it was the best one to end on, perhaps.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, because I know that little things like this, I know that with Thor, you're wondered where the Natalie Portman thing is going to end up, considering she's not in the Avengers.
Right.
On that note, in Captain America, his love interest, Peggy Carter...
Oh, man, yeah, that's messed up.
Yeah, how he says that they're going to go on a date as soon as he comes back, and then he flies his final mission in the first Avenger. It's cut, but it was originally written and filmed in the Avengers to actually have... present-day Steve Rogers contact Peggy when he's unfrozen in the future to let her know that he didn't abandon her. It was supposed to be a scene to connect that, but they cut it.
Here's the problem I have with this. Isn't his love interest her granddaughter or something going forward?
Probably. I don't know.
That's messed up, yo.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's way too incestuous.
Come on.
Yeah,
Come on.
I don't like
you travel through time, who cares?
Very weird. That brings us to now, May 4th. The Avengers is coming out. Everybody's here. We should have mentioned Jeremy Renner and Hawkeye and Thor. Small part.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I forgot that he had a small cameo in that.
Much like Scarlett Johansson and Black Widow, except he was sort of a nemesis. He wasn't per se a good guy.
Yeah,
he was just sort of a dude doing his job. But everyone's here. You got Mark Ruffalo taking over as Bruce Banner the Hulk. Shit. Gwyneth Paltrow, Pepper Potts is back. Like, everybody's here. Lou Ferrigno is the voice of the Incredible Hulk.
Only person out there is Natalie Portman.
Yeah, interesting laugh. As far as we know, maybe she'll make a cameo. Couple things to note. According to Joss Whedon, the film is strongly influenced by the 1960s Avengers comics, which he was a fan of growing up. In those comics, these people shouldn't be in the same room, let alone on the same team, and that is the definition of family.
Yes.
Also should note, due to legal issues preventing a number of Avengers characters from their inclusion in this film, most notably Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, the two children of Magneto, as well as adversaries Doctor Doom, Norman Osborn, Green Goblin. Because they don't own the rights to those characters, they were unable to be included in this film.
Makes sense. Doom with the Fantastic Four movies and Spider-Man for Green Goblin.
Yeah. So there you have it, and the X-Men being Fox as well.
Yes.
So, I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm curious to see how they bring it all together. There's a lot of sort of telling where they are, sort of the same problem they have with the Arrested Development movie, where each character has to have would have had their 5 minutes, and that's why they're doing a TV show before that. This one, they don't have a TV show before it.
That's why I'm hoping they take a character or two that I think I remember hearing that this is supposed to be Captain America's story. So I'm hoping that they're going to take the vein of Captain America, and the other characters and their reasonings will get caught up into what Captain America's doing, rather than each one being their own separate thing that gets its own separate basis.
Yeah.
So
the other thing that's to be considered is, Jeremy Renner and Scarlett Johansson, are they really going to do anything to talk about them since they haven't thus far?
Yeah, I mean, they at least have the easy out because both of them are S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is just kind of the organization that Nick Fury runs. So it's kind of easy to just be like, here's two of my good agents.
Well, then there's the whole thing about, S.H.I.E.L.D. being a movie. They've talked about doing a S.H.I.E.L.D. movie, and an Avengers movie, and sort of around those lines. Anyway, I'm interested in it. Let us know your thoughts at MacGuffinPodcast.com or Twitter.com/MacGuffinCast, Facebook.com/MacGuffinPodcast, phone number 323-761-9842. We're on iTunes, Blip.tv, Miro, Get Glue, Roku. Good times. Leave us a review. We love that stuff. Yeah. And we'll see you next time.
T-1000 can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Magneto can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Even Zod can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. It's tight. Don't even try to bite the side. Mr. Spock can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Wrath of Khan can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Borg can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Because I've got space game and it feels alright.